Destroy us all!
So get this, I was escorting the cart and out of nowhere it just randomly stopped. I thought my game was bugged at first, but it turns out I have to move this seemingly inconspicuous rock out of the way for the cart to progress. Then a game-breaking bug actually happened. Yeah, I had to restart my game because the encounter wouldn't trigger. So after escorting the slowest cart in the world, the group finds themselves surrounded. Then in an instant, the most badass character in Blue Dragon drops from the heavens like an angel with a choir to save this freight train of a plot. Here we're introduced to Zola. Oh, and King Jibral and his army and stuff. But yeah, Zola is the coolest character in this game by far. Now, watch yourselves, because I'm about to unabashedly gush about how much I love Zola, and that's pretty rare for me. Just look at this character's design. Zola is a pirate, warrior, and assassin all in one. If that's not badass, I don't know what is. Plus, she has other assets. Her demeanor is silent and mysterious, but also courageous. She never seems to waver. I'll be real with you, Zola really doesn't deliver much in this game in terms of personality, but have you ever just resonated with a character purely based on their aesthetic? That's me and Zola right there. Plus it helps that I kinda had a crush on her when I was like 12. What? Everyone has their own childhood cartoon anime crush. I ain't afraid to admit it. While y'all were peeving on Naruto and Bleach characters when you were 12, I had gained a refined taste for the adolescent waifu. Zola is also the only character in Blue Dragon with modest but very noticeable jiggle physics. Her boobs don't fly so high that they threaten to slap her in the face, but they do move around enough to make a counter gimmick out of them. Try playing along at home to see how high we get, but if you want my guess on it, Zola is also your 5th party member who can summon a giant killer bat. The fact that she has such a badass appearance is made painful and blue ballsy since Zola is probably your worst character starting off. Yeah, she comes packaged with only 4 classes, her highest being the assassin class, and she really doesn't have any remarkable spells and abilities. It hurts her that the assassin class is the weakest of all of them too. Its abilities are more novelty than anything, aside from the stun bomb, which essentially is a field skill that makes getting initiative on enemies the easiest thing ever. By the time I got her in my party, her sword skills were significantly worse than Shu's, her magic was bad, and her DPS was the weakest of all my party members. Building her swordsmaster, monk, and assassin classes to something of worth was an uphill climb, so she really had no major role in my party until about 20 hours after I got her. That doesn't stop her from being the best though.
Let's go, my fellow magic users.
So Zola teams up with you to fight some tigers, gets one shot, and you all rejoice at Jibral Castle, where Marumaru makes me hate him even more.
Lady Zola?
Well, I suppose so.
He is really weird.
Lady Zola? Man, reminding me of another annoying anthro shithead right now, Marumaru.
Are you alright, Lady On?
So at this point, I shut down the plot train to explore Jibral a little more, and it reminded me of a nagging thought I've had. Something about this game's lore that just fucking irks me. It's pretty simple. How the fuck do spell shops exist? Sure, I can understand item and accessory shops, even though it might be a bit odd that vendors are selling bird wings that bring people back from the dead and earrings that protect you from mortal blows. But how are spell shops a common enterprise when the only people who can perform spells and use magic are these 4? At this point in the game, it becomes established knowledge that magic use is tied to shadows and no one else in the world can use shadows. So how and why do people sell these spells, and how are these spells taught? Are they taught via some book or scroll? Now I know why spell shops exist. The developers needed a way to get the player to access upgraded spells, so they put them in a vendor. But that still doesn't make sense because spells can just be found sitting in random spots in the overworld. Where do these vendors get access to ancient spells that can cause destruction in seconds? And who else has the ability to utilize these spells in any meaningful way? I only ask because in a world where monsters roam the countrysides and terrorize villages, it might be good to train some sages in the dark arts. Anyway, we enter Jibral Castle, where King Jibral formally introduces himself and convenes with the group about why Talta Village needed to be evacuated and its connection to the purple fog that encompasses Jibral Kingdom once a year. Convinced that it's Nene's doing, the group then meet with King Jibral and Zola at the roof of the castle. King Jabral then states that he's been working on a plan to capture and invade Nene's mothership when the clouds next invade, which conveniently is tomorrow. Shu offers to join him in his plan, and King Jabral immediately breaks character with the funniest line in this game so far.
That's way cool. You gotta let me in on that.
I was so hoping that you would say that.
So let me get this straight. King Jabral knew that different locations were experiencing other tragedies once a year, but he never thought to ask or assist them? Maybe it's because of how many flesh-eating monsters roam the countryside. I'd never leave my house with those fucking tigers running around.
She's so direct.
But there's more to Lady Zola, Shu. Lady Zola is oh so cute when she smiles.
Lady Zola smiles. Wow, never mind. This is the funniest line in this game. The group agrees to follow Jabral's plan and talk with Zola briefly about how she gained her magic powers.
Lady Zola, your magic is amazing! So cool! But maybe, just maybe, did you get your magic from Nene? Or did you get it like Shu and everyone else? They were told by some stranger to swallow a light sphere!
No, Well, it was the same as you. I was ordered to swallow a ball of light by a stranger.
Where? The same thing happened to us in Nene's flying castle.
Well, I've never met anyone named Nene. The first time I heard his name was from your story.
Okay, she's totally gonna betray you. I mean, there's no way she's not. She's so sketchy about the origin of her powers, plus her story doesn't add up at all. She's still the waifu though. So you go to sleep that night and the purple fog invades Jabral. They await the arrival of Nene's ship and it eventually falls down from the sky.
Bring out the harpoons!
Harpoons at the ready!
Sir!
King Jabral then goes through with his plan to bring down Nene's mothership, and it somehow works really well. Wow. His forces storm onto Nene's ship like they're on the beaches of fucking Normandy, and Zola, Shu, and company jump into the interior of the ship to take it out from the inside. You land in the interior of Nene's ship and are greeted with a pretty badass guitar loop as the dungeon theme. I suppose they wanted to give you a notable area theme here because you'll be walking around in circles through long drawn out hallways for hours. Plus for some reason this is the only theme that plays in this area. There is no battle theme aside from the boss theme. Since most of my time here was spent fighting a ton of enemies, I feel I should talk about something I've only lightly brushed on this game, the combat. Yes, on the surface Blue Dragon is just like any other JRPG. You have your basic stats like attack, defense, magic, power, and agility. You have your basic physical attacks, magic swords, which are like the physical attacks with elements that use MP, and then your 4 types of magic: black magic, white magic, support, and barrier. You also have a turn wheel that's displayed above, and a character's speed will have an impact on the frequency and order in which they act. It's when you peel back the layers of this combat system that you realize how fucked it actually is. Let's break it down. First is the game's use of several different elements. This game does nothing, absolutely nothing, to help you figure out what each of the elements does, what enemies are weak to what elements, and how to best utilize them in combat. I have no idea when an enemy is weak to wind, strong to wind, or why I should ever use a wind sword over a flare sword or a water sword. Like, take a guess as to what this shadow spell does. It poisons enemies. I would have had no idea what it did without pure luck. The most I can do is guess if an enemy is weak or strong to something by the way they look, and sometimes I'm right on the nose, and other times I have no fucking clue. There's no monster type chart matchup, no indicator of attack effectiveness aside from damage output, and just no basic way to determine what enemy is weak to what. On top of this, there's a charge mechanic on moves. Magic users can charge their spells no matter what, but physical attackers need to equip the charge ability from the monk class before they can use that. The charge system was never explained to me, and I had no idea what this little red bar inside of it was. Turns out that it's a sweet spot for your moves that lowers the MP usage and makes it come out a little faster. I learned that from GameFAQs. There's just a lot about the combat that's never explained, and that makes most of my encounters either a guessing game or just a mindless slog through enemies with attacks that will hit the most of them at once. At the best, it's a crapshoot. At worst, it's mindless. So the group dives deeper into Nene's lair and finds one of his ship's eternal engines and make it a goal to shut all 6 of them down. After powering down the first, we're greeted by a cutscene with Nene and the Glockbot Sabo, where Nene orders him to release the goons on our heroes. Sabo then sets 4 maniac killer robots free from their prisons, and honestly this scene is just so cool.
As I say, or I'll fry your puny minds with the control unit.
Just the fact that he has these bots locked up in a small chamber implies that they're menacingly powerful. Plus they make these weird fucked up noises in that cutscene, and one of them grabs Sabo's head. This is the most personality that anyone in this game has gotten, and these characters seem genuinely interesting. So it's great that they appear in front of you for a second, and then you beat the fuck out of each of them and they're all gone forever.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
Yeah, these guys are the most underutilized and one-dimensional villains, and that sucks because their designs and introductions are so cool. The first robot you fight comes in twirling 2 pistols in one of the goofiest and most pointless scenes in recent memory. Revolver Ocelot bot here is probably the most dangerous of the 4. His guns do a shit ton of damage, and he has this flashbang move that can silence someone. He really didn't like Maru in my fight against him. I don't blame him. Robot number 2, the fat bot with the swords, has this gimmick where he started the fight by changing the formation of my party by moving everyone in the back row in the front, and vice versa. It also really didn't like Kluke and kept targeting her, which made doing damage a bitch. Robot number 3, the fat bot with the bombs, was a damage sponge, and right when I was done with the fight, the game told me how to counter his bomb throws, but he already died before I could do anything about it, so whatever. The last bot is a ninja bot, and she was the easiest of the 4. She performed a move that gave her haste early on, but I had level 2 water sword attack on Shu that slowed her down, and I casted haste on my dudes just to beat her at her own shitting game. So you beat up the robots and reach an impasse when looking for the last eternal engine. There are 2 teleporters, but only one leads to the right place. Shu suggests they split up, and Zola immediately volunteers to go alone.
Right. I'll take this one. You guys take that one.
Yeah, not sketchy at all, but okay. The group go through one of the teleporters, and of course it turns out to be the wrong one. I just want to make note of this area and the fact that no music plays in it at all, not even the battle theme plays. I doubt it was intentional, it seems like a programming error, but there's just something eerie about it, and not in a good way. So they trek through this long hallway and find Nene attempting to escape on the other end. He immediately has a life alert incident when trying to get into his escape pod, but his robot butler helps him up. The butler then stops the group from giving chase, and you beat the fuck out of him in the easiest boss fight I've played through in a while. Dude barely got my main tank below 1/3 of his health. After smashing the robot into bits and pieces, the group chase after Nene in one of his mechats that Shu somehow knows how to be a Top Gun ace pilot with, despite the fact that he crashed the last one instantly, but whatever. They catch a glimpse of Nene's face in what is the grossest scene in Blue Dragon. After an awkward and ill-fitting on-rail shooting segment where you attempt to gun down Nene's ship, he narrowly escapes, and they return to find that Nene's mothership had sunk. The next morning, everyone holds a celebration at King Dubral's castle, and... ah, shit. Give me a minute. Alright, so after a little party thrown in Jibral Castle, the king asked for the group to join Zola in pursuing Nene, whose mechat fled to the north to a set of ruins that contain ancient machines of war, which is information they learned from...
Ancient machines of war. The ones that you heard about from the mural people.
Okay, so everyone just knows about the mural people? Fuck right off with that. Just 4 hours ago, they were a myth. No one knew they existed. But somehow we're getting important plot info from them, despite the fact that our party never mentioned them to anyone. Honestly, this is the type of shit I hate in fiction. Do not leave loose ends like this. Either give us some prior explanation for characters knowing certain things that they'd have no reason to comprehend before, or don't make the thing a mystery in the first place.
I'd feel a lot better if you guys would help me out.
Really, Lady Zola?
Okay, it's settled then.
So the group agree to follow Zola north and make plans to embark the next morning. That night, we're greeted with more awkward character bonding moments. This time, love is in the air. Nauseating, unprecedented love. The first scene builds a relationship between Zola and King Jibral, and
I would very much like you to have this. This has been in my family since ancient times. It is said that its gemstone contains incredible powers, and it has protected everyone from great kings to common soldiers in countless battles. And I believe it will most surely protect you. I mean, you and your friends as well.
This is most kind of you, Your Majesty.
Zola, that... in our kingdom, a ring adorning that finger signifies marriage.
But Your Majesty, this is the only finger it will fit on.
Be gone, fuck!
the next scene is a bit of a reaction from Shu and Jiro. Shu sees what the king did and opts to make a ring for Kluk. Being a 16-year-old teen, Jiro assumes that Shu has a thing for Kluk, but it turns out that Shu's just an idiot who acts like he's 10 despite the fact that he's 16 canonically, and wants to give her the ring because it was cool that the king did it for Zola.
Oh, that. Well, you know, I just thought it was cool how the king gave Zola a ring, that's all.
Jiro, playing into his naivete, decides to make a game out of it between them, allowing him to avoid admitting his feelings for Kluk to the guy who has the emotional maturity of a toddler. What commences next is a shit jewel crafting minigame where you play against an AI Jiro to make rings for Kluk. The ring I gave her specialized in what she was good at, MP and magic damage. Jiro, being a numbnuts, spec'd his gem points in defense, which makes no sense because she sits in the back row where she never gets hit, but whatever. What you get from this minigame is an awkward scene between the three, and the option of 2 rings to equip on Kluk. One of them was the superior choice because it was made with her actual character stats in mind. The next morning you begin your journey north by walking out of Jibral Castle, which makes no sense since the group have a perfectly good functioning mech hat that they hijacked in town that Shu obviously shown that he knows how to drive, but the game wants to pad out another dozen hours of gameplay, so we walk instead. Now, ever being the contrarian, I knew the game told me to head north, so I decided to head south into an area that I've never been to before. I was surprised to see that an entire side quest existed here. It only adds about 3 hours of game time, so I'll be brief with it. You head into the Forest of Exile where you hear a voice that tells you to relay a message to a woman named Sarah Sarah in the Gorgo village.
Don't.
Why not?
This mist is dangerous.
You are correct. This is the land of exile, where the banished ones live in the cursed mist.
Whoa, so scared!
Travelers, if you could, would you be so kind as to go to the village of the Gorgo tribe? Once there, tell my dear Sarah Sarah not to ring the bell and to forget.
So they decide to help the ominous random voice in the dark foreboding cave and head down to the village to learn that the man you talk to's name is Guru Guru, and he allegedly stole a gem delivered as a gift from Jibral Castle. Heading deeper into the village, they see a woman standing in the town square. Realizing it's Sarah Sarah, the group tell her that Guru Guru said not to ring the bell and to forget.
Guru? He said not to ring the bell and to forget. I see.
But but she completely ignores you and rings the bell anyway. See, Sarah is convinced that her boyfriend was framed for the theft by the village chief Jiggle, the biggest tool and most cartoonishly transparent villain in this game. He's so obviously evil that literally the first thing he does when he enters the frame is an evil maniacal laugh, and he just wants to sleep with Sarah and force her to be his lover.
You need to stop ringing the bell. Guru has been sent indefinitely to the land of exile. He'll never return to the village. Why don't you come to my place?
Honestly, I have to say that I found this side quest to be vastly more interesting than anything in the main story thus far. We have an obvious love triangle set up, a tale of deception and betrayal, our villain has an easily identifiable and deplorable goal, and the character's personality, albeit far too exaggerated, is at least there. This is a far cry from Nene, who at this point we have no idea of his motivations, goals, or backstory. There's a real narrative here, and it's kind of disappointing that it's shoved into some optional side quest that only lasts a couple hours. Where was I? Yeah, you sneak into Giglolo's treasure hoard, find the gem, and beat the shit out of him.
Guards, get rid of these troublemakers!
Look. As you can see, the gem is safe.
Then you retrieve Guru from the land of exile, and everyone lives happily ever after. So let's get back to the shitty plot. After going north, you head into a desert called the Laser Field. I wonder why it's called that.
It looks like the moons are really close.
Whoa! Many moons! Moonlight! Moonlight!
It's moving!
Whoa!
It is! It's moving! But why?
This way!
Yeah, apparently this game just pulls a Dr. Eggman on you, and the moon has a fucking laser cannon attached to it on the other side that just happens to start malfunctioning. So the laser field is one of the most obnoxious parts of this game. Do you remember the Thunder Plains from Final Fantasy X? Yeah, this is that, but worse. Imagine being targeted by killer lasers every step you take for 10 minutes straight. After realizing that the laser field is too much, they find a bunker in the ground where a robot hand waves them in to offer refuge. Jumping down into the bunker, the group mistakes the robots they come across as enemies and instantly tackle one of them.
I gotcha! Alright, who are you? Ow!
They soon realize that the robots aren't out to hurt them and accept their olive branch of assistance. Heading past the gate, the crew see that the robots have created a replica of a small ancient village called Bayroi Town. Here you learn that the robots have been awaiting the arrival of their master for a long-ass time, and of course, when you enter their holy temple, you see the same insignia that Nene wears. But because everyone in this group huffs glue, they don't make the connection and walk around blind to the fact. Inside the temple, you come across a helpful robot and a dickwad one. Shu then dubs the helpful robot Yasato and the dick robot Hineto.
You are Yusato, because you're the nice one. And the mean robot will call Hineto. That's perfect.
Yasato?
Hineto?
Those are dumb names.
I agree, Kluke, those names suck, but I didn't write this game, so I don't have a say. Later, they head to the top floor of the temple and see that the only safe way out is blocked by blue barriers, and learn that the only way to remove them is to use magic to operate a device in the basement. Going into the basement, they find a flaming horse that follows the trend of easy boss fights, and get a remote that shuts off all of the blue barriers everywhere. So, being the 1000 IQ gamer that I am, I remembered that the only entrance back into the ancient ruins from the beginning of the game was blocked by a blue barrier. So I returned to the ruins and found a giant poo sleeping in front of a treasure chest. Yeah, the poo beat the shit out of me. Realizing that I was way out of my league, I decided to just follow the plot once more. And the exit to Bayroi Town led straight to a cave that introduced me to this game's meme enemy. These are Kellions.
Why are you running?
Why are you running?
Kellions run away from you, are weak, and give a ton of experience. The only caveat with them is that they have the ability to turn one of your party members into a Kellyon, an annoying status element that keeps a party member from using spells and dramatically weakens them. This cave had a whole area dedicated to grinding Kellions, which I took as an invitation to power level my team. Unfortunately, this was a trap, and in retrospect that was pretty obvious. Killing all of them awoke some random PMS dragon that really wasn't a difficult fight at all, but could probably wipe a weak team that isn't expecting it. In the next plot move, the gang head into an ancient factory, where they learn that machines from the ancient war are still being built.
No. Look closer. See those weapons? Those are machines of war.
So they used machines like these in the ancient wars.
That sound, that's the same one we heard before.
So this machine is still operating?
Yasato and the others have been operating for 10,000 years. I wouldn't be surprised if this machine has been too.
So it still works then?
Even though the war ended long ago, instruments of war are still being made.
You'd think that they ran out of resources after a millennia, but whatever. Upon exiting the factory, the group returned to the surface to find that an army of robots from earlier is breaking through the ground to kill them all. The robots' heads turn to screens, all with Nene's face looking back at them. And here's where we get our single glimpse into Nene's motivations.
I know you can hear us.
You worms are insignificant.
You have no right to call us that.
This planet belongs to me.
What? Is he out of his mind?
Come on, let's settle this fair and square.
Settle this? Why should I bother with you people? Why should I even have to? There's no reason to.
Is that so? You might not have a reason, but we've got plenty of them.
I really despise you people. You who are controlling this planet. This entire planet should belong to me. I despise you all. I will show you who is king.
Now, this jumps into one of the major issues I've had with this game. Nene is transparently evil for no reason, and it's stupid. His character motivations are controlling the world, and we really learn nothing about him, why he feels this way, his backstory, how he's still alive if he's an ancient, or if he's just a descendant of the ancients. There's so little answered about this villain that I could care less about him. Sure, he looks kinda menacing, and he's a bit of a dick, but he really doesn't have a character. He's just an evil plot device. So the group activate a red barrier from a remote they got earlier and find themselves safe from Nene's horde of thousands of robots. Realizing that he's been blue-balled, Nene sends the citizens of Bayroy Town to be martyrs for him, and the group realize that he's been their master. Oh no, the robots with Nene's insignia turned out to be working for him all along. The shock. As a result of seeing all of these robots kill themselves by blindly following orders, the group has an internal struggle on whether to keep the barrier up or not.
Stop! All of you, stop it!
What now, shoot?
Well, we should
Keep the shield up. Let's keep it going as long as we can.
Why? They're the ones who helped us out!
Nonsense. Our shield is holding up well. We don't have much choice. We should let the enemy waste its forces trying to break it down. That's the art of war.
I'm with Zola here. Keep the barrier up. They're just fucking robots. At worst, they could be rebuilt.